Good afternoon. My name is David Vazquez. I am co-founder and CTO at APInity. I'm a tech guy, 23 years working in technology, for the first 12 in the mobile industry, Motorola, Nokia. I became API aware when I became CTO at Smava, one of the largest fintech companies in Germany. We were connected to 28 different banks through APIs to sell their credit, where we were a loan consumer broker. And then for the last 4 years, building up Apinity as an API management company. So today I'm going to talk to you about API security and the problem of overengineering. And I would like to start with a preamble. This preamble starts with a couple of truisms. The first one is the importance of API security. And it's hard to just stop here. Everybody knows that. This is the backbone of our internet, how we give access to our data, our core systems, and this access has to be secure. Now, the second truism is that the energy or budget, if you wish, of your organization is limited for security. And this should be a truism as much as the first one, because everything is limited in life. However, the way I have been in security meetings with security officials from different companies, it seems that time stops and we have infinite energy to go through any kind of questions, outdated, focusing on areas that are not really bringing the focus to where it should be brought. And that's why I challenge that this is a truism actually. And my point here would be that we should all treat security waste in the sense of over-engineering and bureaucracy as a security threat. Because if you should be as energy efficient addressing your security as the bad guys will be energy efficient when they're trying to penetrate your system. So in this talk, I'm going to take a stand and advocate for a natural and energy efficient approach to address security and API security in particular through a framework, a 5-pillar framework, tooling, and mindset. And having said this, I can go to the agenda, and obviously I will start by introducing this framework in 5 pillars. Then I will do a deep dive in 3 of them: governance, transparency, and API operations. And then I will touch on the mindset before we close. So let's go directly with the framework. This is it, 5 pillars. First one, API authentication and authorization. Second, data security. Third one, governance. And there are 2 aspects to governance. One is architecture, and the second one is secure software development lifecycle, transparency and discoverability, and finally, API operations. Everything that I will share during this talk about the 2 first pillars, API authentication, authorization, and data security, is in this slide because I am not going to reinvent the wheel. Use OAuth 2 is way superior to API keys. If you want to make it more secure, enforce mutual TLS. And then when you want to play authorization, most solutions are just using the very flexible OAuth 2 scopes, and you can interpret these OAuth 2 scopes in different ways to have policy-based or different scope-based different models to address how you want to do fine-grained authorization. With OAuth 2 scopes, you can implement access control lists, and with claim-based authorization, role-based access control is just a variety of it. Data security, so let me remind that, of course, everybody's using HTTPS out there. Everybody's using at least TLS 1.2, but remember that the API gateway has this bad habit and need to break the end-to-end encryption. Therefore, your payload is going to be in clear at some point, even if it's in volatile memory in the API gateway. So if the data that you're sending is super critical, consider doing end-to-end encryption at the application level. And then, of course, think fine-grained authorization to your data, and then you're back to point number 1. Use the mechanisms there for authorization. And now I'll move to the other 3 areas that I would like to stop a bit more. First one is governance. So first of all, let's address the architecture aspects of it. And first, understand and challenge your needs, remove waste. In particular, this might seem like a joke, but there's many companies out there that are still using IP whitelisting. Get rid of it. This is what I mean by challenge your needs. Then, second very important question, what do you actually need from your API gateway? Because there's actually multiple solutions. You can consider, if you are a mid-sized company, use it as a SaaS, software as a service. This is particularly interesting if the internal management of your APIs is not what you're after, but actually you care more about the inside out and outside in exchange of APIs. Then not having the API gateway within your cloud vendor is really not a problem. And then you don't need to worry about operations. This is what we do at APInity. Or you can actually go and check with your cloud provider. They all have a solution for you at hand. Or of course, you can go for a specific API vendor. When you do that, the one problem that we also solve for our customers, and we see as the biggest problem that has to be solved, is connecting this API gateway with the identity and access management solution that you have inside your cloud perimeter. This is also what we come and solve with our enterprise customers, because you need to access the IAM solution to get credentials that then you can give to the people making subscriptions, and they can go through your API gateway. And unless you solve this problem, the experience that you provide will not be seamless for consumers. And you're going to introduce overhead either in your IT administration teams or in the publisher teams directly. Finally, consider separating domains. When you are managing your own gateway, you can keep a security and operations layer for yourself, for your cloud and security teams, define policies, define governance, and then you can have a separated accessibility layer worried about making things transparent and easy to use. And I use this example. This comes actually from a customer of us. So they have their own gateway, and with their teams, they care about the bottom layer, they care about high availability, they care about the standard policies, they care about governance, and then all the experience of transparency, of publishing, catalogs, inviting, subscriptions, analytics, branding, they basically outsource it to our product. We come and connect to their gateway, and they are separating concerns. We don't want to know what they do. It's their security policy, but we make the whole experience happen. Then last point on architecture, linked to the layer approach to security and the concept of zero trust, where you know that it's not anymore the unsafe world outside and then your thick wall and your secure wall inside. You need to be allowing access from your external partners, and you shouldn't be trusting what happens inside your network so much. So basically, treat everything with zero trust. And here, the fact of having an API gateway in the middle allows you to think of at least three doors. One is the external web layer. This is where the IP whitelisting is, the mutual TLS, the OAuth 2, then the API gateway. And finally, you can implement further controls at the server that is receiving the request and needs to reply with the data. And a very interesting mechanism that I would like to share with you, because I was very positively impressed when I learned it. One of our customers is using it, this external token replacement mechanism, where before the gateway, any external traffic coming with their own tokens is analyzed. The tokens are verified and then replaced by the internal token standard JWT. So from that point on, all the traffic in the network, be external and internal, is treated in the same way. And you also have a single point of control where you can revoke access to anything that is external traffic. I'm moving now to the second aspect of governance, which is secure development lifecycle. And this means basically shift security left in your development process. If you happen to have ISO 27001 certification, you must have specified a secure development lifecycle. So use it for this purpose. And there are simple things that you can do, like tag tickets that have any impact on security, and do so during product definition or at the latest during product refinement phase. Establish security roles within the teams and have early approval processes, because any ticket that is security related, you can approve it at the same time that you are committing to the sprint. And when you do this, the security approvals that you need are no longer at odds with your strategy for continuous deployment. Any ticket that can go into the sprint has been pre-approved, and then it can flow into production following your continuous deployment strategy. Standardized API development. There's many areas that you can standardize: authentication and access control, the use of input validation libraries, error handling, or having templates for the microservices that you want to have running in your organization. And finally, this is a huge area of tooling. So, and the right place to put it, or a typical way to put it, is in your continuous integration pipeline. So make your pick here and get good tools to check the quality of your APIs. There are already plugins into Sonar Cloud that you can use for this. So this is covering governance, and let's move to transparency and discoverability. And transparency is actually a main pillar, it's one of the 5 pillars, because we humans are just terrible and horrible at managing things that we cannot see. And there is this saying that it's in English, but you have equivalents in French, German, Spanish, and I haven't checked any other language. And this is just how we behave. What the eyes don't see, the heart doesn't grieve. So we need to make APIs visible. It is impossible to secure APIs when you don't know what you have and you don't even know whether or not they are in use. So you need to know your API state. You need to treat APIs as digital products. You need to give them a face so that then you can manage them effectively. And any digital product, any product in reality, has some benefit for the organization. Typically, you could think of monetization, but also every product brings some risks. And in the case of APIs, you have operational risk. I am down, my whole service is down, and you have security risks that you need to manage. And you need to be able to visualize these risks in your product. And once you have visualized APIs and the risks and opportunities, then you can use your scarce resources and limited resources for security to prioritize security measures, because you can do an API risk assessment and consider matters like, okay, how much money this API is bringing, how many people are using it, when it's being used, and therefore prioritize the APIs that you are securing. Finally, API operations, and I mentioned it last, but actually I would advise that when you start thinking about API security, you start from this angle, because this is the healthy angle. When you wake up at night worrying, you will start thinking things like, am I being attacked right now? How can I know? Am I vulnerable? So this is the questions, and this already brings a very real and mindset to addressing API security. And my recommendation here is actually follow the nature's algorithm to develop brains, detect, defend, and prevent. And I'm going to give you one of the my favorite references, the book that you can read a chapter on the evolutionary story of brains. And let me make this digression. When you're a bunch of cells, no nervous system, you're being eaten by an animal and you don't even realize. So having a nervous system, a central nervous system, is an evolutionary advantage. Now imagine that you start developing eyes on top of this central nervous system, and now you can actually see something approaching. So you have some motor capabilities, you can escape, you can do something about it. So obviously, developing senses, developing eyes on top of your central nervous system is an advantage. And then imagine that you develop a brain like humans have with a neocortex. So now you can have a guy like us walking in the jungle and thinking, hey, there might be a snake or a tiger hiding behind a tree. And your brain is always thinking, trying to prevent something bad happening to you. And this is exactly how brains have been developed. And this is the approach that I would encourage you to have to security. So when you're thinking about alarms and monitoring, when you're thinking about API logging and smart processing of these logs, you are in the detect phase. And then when you're thinking about rate limiting, ingress egress control, then you're thinking about the defend phase. And finally, when you're thinking about periodic security assessment or having a security posture, and again, here, tooling is a great place where you need this tooling in place to have a security posture. Here, you are in the prevent. And actually, you go back to the pillars, all the aspects of governance They are about preventing, right? Okay, so we have talked about the 5 pillars. We have talked about tooling in the way. So let me summarize with mindset. First and foremost, your security budget is limited. Act responsibly. Be bold. Eliminate waste from your security and compliance processes. Now, understand and challenge the needs and requirements. First and foremost, what kind of API gateway you need? Do you need to do active management of it? This is also where you should be getting rid of your IP whitelisting in case you would have it. Challenge the needs that the organization has. And finally, a word on stay rational. I am an engineer, and engineers will love to build stuff. So avoid over engineering. And when you are confronted with a build versus buy versus make decision, please remember that make decisions are always right. Sorry, buy decisions are always right. Go for tooling. I have been confronted to these hard decisions before because, again, we always love the idea of building things, creating teams. Consider if this is your core business. Consider if there's any way that you will develop some realistic competitive advantage developing this. Consider also the capabilities of your organization. Who is out there making tools? Do you have the same DNA? Do you have the same focus? Should you compete with those, or should you actually buy their product? And finally, something that I learned actually in Nokia is that together with the right to write lines of code, you recover a lifetime obligation to maintain and evolve the code you own. So here the rule is, please explore anything that you can integrate before you start writing your first line of code that is going to bring these lifetime obligations. Okay, I'm getting to the closing and a summary, what we have addressed during this talk. I have introduced an approach to API security with a mix of a security framework in 5 pillars, the tooling and mindset. I have presented this simple framework: API authorization and authentication, data security, governance, transparency, and API operations. We have given a few examples of where you should put an emphasis on the tooling you use and consider tooling as one of your pillars, and we have addressed mindset. I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation, you have found it useful, and please reach out to APInity if you would like to continue the conversation. Thank you very much.